Hey Varun, I just thought let me do a small video of the process instead of sharing you the entire process of working on this. Because I don't think I'll be able to complete in all honesty, but but there are reasons to it of why, which I'll probably explain and hope it makes sense. I saw your last message on WhatsApp regarding these the character not looking good because of the materials. In my opinion, it's not only because of the materials, man. I think it's a lot of factors contributing to it. It's like the mesh itself, the way the shape of these the like for instance the head is and things like that. It just doesn't give you that believability factor, right? And the textures itself also look like really wacky, right? It looks like weird in weird shapes, right? It's almost like a little cartoony in a lot of ways. It feels a little crayon, chalk piece drawn, things like that, right? So it's not adding to these things. It's not adding to the believability factor, right? So it's not only the material, because if I do see for instance, the material thing that you should, I mean, it's not that bad. I mean, there are of course things that you can do here that can actually help, but this is not the reason why the model looks like weird, right? I think a lot of it is coming because of all these factors coming in together. And I'm not sure, I've not used this AI app and I don't know how far it is. But at this stage, I might not, I'm not sure if I would be using this going forward to the pipeline, and I'll probably explain a little bit better. Um, and also in terms of I did see the Elden Ring the references and things. I feel like it's looking okay, and I do understand it looks like super low res and and basic, right? But a lot of that, I mean, it kind of feels okay because of like the art style in general looks like a little painterly, right? It's like it doesn't have like super high, like it's not photoreal, right? A lot of these bricks, for instance, doesn't have like a sort of tertiary details on top of it to get that. So it in a way you can get away with that. Stuff, right? Because a lot of it is actually also coming because of lighting, man. It just looks a lot of the screenshots when I saw or the gameplay, I felt it was just like too bland, right? It's not really doing much. Like for instance, in this screenshot, like there's no shadow or anything there. It just looks flat, like diffuse. So I would not really keep this more of a benchmark or in the reference that this is what gamers will probably expect or for NPCs, but I will still, try. Great gamers again, like GTA 5, for instance, like that's still like better target because I'm sure like it's really optimized enough for that game to even run. But more importantly, those stuff, I mean, a lot of it is super basic, but at the same time, it is done to an extent where it kind of works with the lighting, right? Like all the folds and all the stuff. It does feel like right, and it works well within that environment, right? And I'm sure you can do something a little higher than this for the game that you're trying to envision, right? I think it's you don't need to go super low res. You can go a little higher, but not at the same time do something like Elden Ring, in my opinion. Um, okay, so when I started the day, I actually imported the character into Maya, and I immediately found a lot of issues. Like for instance, like these sort of opened up, meshes having a lot of issues and things like that. And this is certainly you're going to have a lot of this. You will encounter a lot of the issues while animating at some point. But I was like, do I clean this up, man? It's going to take a while. But then I also noticed like it also has like issues in the UVs, which I'll probably go through in a bit. Like, so I was like, okay, it has issues here, but let me see what I can do with this. Right. So I imported that, and then I was thinking, okay, like, you know what? I was little confused whether what sort of pipeline should I follow, right? Like, do you want to necessarily use the diffuse that came along with it, or you don't? I mean, like, it's a question that it's a little hard to answer. So I thought, you know what? Since it has come out with it, like, let me see what I can do with it. So I wanted to, I imported it out, and I wanted to see if I can clean it up, and it's going to take a long time, dude. Okay, so it has a lot of issues. As you can see, it's like it's not only the weird like way in which it's wrapping around, which again is also you can see that in this this exam, like, the other example also, right? It's a lot of that is happening for some reason. It's just the way, I guess, the AI tool is just projecting the textures. I'm not sure, but so the option is to, like, the first thing is to clean it. I mean, in case you want to use the diffuse for some reason, you have to clean it up, and and cleaning alone is going to take a long time, man. It's because you kind of want to, like, it's not only the question of, like, for instance, removing shadows, but it's going to be like, you kind of want to also, like, make it, like, better, right? So, for instance, the phase, it was a little, I have not, it's not like complete by any means, but you kind of want to remove that, so that you kind of want to remove the forced shadowing that is happening out there, and it's a lot of work. I mean, you're going to end up spending a lot of time. And this is where I just found, like, this thing actually has the UV issues also. Like, for instance, if I want to paint something in the ears, it actually gets projected at the back. It's just purely because the UVs are overlapping and things. So I have to go back and fix all the UVs and things. So in a way, it just, you know, I feel like it's just not worth doing so much of work. In that, it's like what you get out of that is just not good, that I feel like it's worth doing, right? So, the same thing. So the other approach was like, what, let me just import this into texture, sorry, in ZBrush, where there is an argument where the diffuse can help. It can. It certainly does. Like, for instance, here, it can, the way you can sculpt the folds and things can be, that information can be driven by the diffuse, so a lot of artists can take cues from it. But more importantly, I think this might be a better approach to do, because if I can just show you an example, right? So this is just the pure, mesh by itself. So if the complication is that in case you want to use this mesh for game thing, there's not much of information I can do on top of the sculpt that is going to that'll have an impact. For instance, like, the folds that I've sculpted is not really much, right? So it's not coming out of the sculpt. So it's not like, there's some, there is no, like, for instance, what do I do? Okay, it's not coming out, like, as you can see here, it's not coming out of the mesh so much that you're not going to see, or you're not going to notice anything. So, but for, unfortunately, like, things like the eyes and nose and the lips, you're going to get into a problem. Like, if I have to sculpt something here, like an eye and like a mouth here, the geometry here needs to support that, and it'll look weird, if you're just going to just bake this information. If I have to bake that information in here, it's going to look weird, man. So that's again a problem. So the easiest approach, in my opinion, is to use this generated, like, output here, and then just, as basically as a guideline, or something, or like, as a bounding box, for instance, right? Like, for instance, you can import, and you can use this to sculpt, and you can use that AI generated tool for more like as a guide to how sculpt, and, like, if you have a particular face that you have generated that you like, you can try to match that. And also, some areas of the AI thing are sometimes good. I think, as I mentioned to you, the clothing folds were, like, really good, and a lot of times you can just probably extract the the trousers, and whatever was working, you can just probably extract that out and just project whatever is working. So that helps in saving time also. But it's not really dramatically, going to reduce the time overall. That's what I'm trying to say. But there are aspects in which we can reuse it, but it's not something that can be done in, like, a couple of days that, I think you were desiring initially, right? So that's where we are. I think, in fact, I can probably show you. I don't really have an example, but I think I can show you one of my personal work. I mean, it's quite old now, but it's still something that you can use, not only for your main character, but for across your thing. And the level of details can be much more simplified. This, of course, is like, as you can see, it's like, it's modular. You can, take off one jacket, and or, one by one, and it'll still work. But more importantly, you can have some level of detail similar to this. I've not done crazy stuff like so. I've not done like stitching and all that sort of stuff in here, which you can probably try think of doing it for the main character if that's the case, or you can drive that through the materials and things like that. But this is what I would try to do. There's alternatively, there's another tool that I forgot about mentioning is something called what is that? Okay, something called Texture XYZ. I don't know whether you've seen this here, but they have a bunch of textures slash like these sort of sculpt or I mean basically they scanned the whole thing and they baked it into a texture so that you can actually map it to a lot of faces that you can so there's only so imagine you want to sculpt a face like if I want to sculpt an old guy like this I can only sculpt to like 60% of it, and then that the rest 40% I can use this map to project all the details, and my sculpt and diffuse and everything has been done already, because it's been like scanned and it's been cleaned up already, right? So and it'll work for sure. Like it's like 8K and it looks really good. So for instance, like this character here. I use the same pipeline, right? So a lot of the skin pores and all that stuff is just completely driven by the scan and even the diffuse. If I can, where is this? Oops. Okay, so even the diffuse, as you can see, is just a direct projection. I mean, there's a little bit of cleanup that you'll have to do at some point, like in the inner nose and inner mouth and things like that. But you can try to, those are smaller work. But more importantly, you get like really high quality result. And this is definitely feasible, and I'll definitely recommend something like this for like the main characters. I think that for the NPCs too, it'll help, but you might not need so much of details, but it does help in getting the sculpt looking like good. Like you don't need to have the tertiary detail, for instance. I think, as you can see, like, okay, let me show you what it does. Give me a second. Okay, let me turn off this diffuse here. Uh, Okay, so you can get a sculpt to a reasonable extent like this, or something which is a little smooth. So this is like your primary, information. That information is extremely valuable. Like that sort of stuff, you can get it out of the tool, and then you can of course get all the pores and other stuff, from the map also. So you don't need it for the NPCs, but it does help you a little bit. That and then also like when you think about and I mean yeah I think regarding the topology I think I mentioned earlier the stuff that we have with the scan is like insanely high. You don't really need so much, man. Like this character, do I have this file? Give me a second. I'll just open this same Marty McFly and hope it works. I mean this is like years ago, man. Sorry for this, but I just want to share you the topology and how much you really need. It's because it's really low res. The amount of stuff that you're getting out of this thing is just not, you don't really need all these things. Yeah. Okay. Screw it. I just think, let me skip all that. It's okay. Oh, shit. Okay. What's happening? Give me a second. Okay. Boom. So, let me just, God. Okay. So the wireframe, yeah. So as you can see, man, it's super low res in terms of the texture. I mean, in terms of the polygons, it's not really high. And the textures, of course, I think this one I've used like 4K, but I think you can reduce it like 1K and it should still run fine. It's not a major thing. But more importantly, it works in a very modular way, right? So you can plan your assets like something which like this, and so you can if you want to swap like with different tires and things like that, you can just easily do so. The most important thing while you do that is just making sure where you plan the outfits are. So for instance, the waistline of the jeans is going to be here. So when you're planning your character, make sure that you kind of have these the guidelines really established really earlier, so that make sure that like there's going to be another shirt it should not be like, longer than that or something. Or if there's anything that on top of it, it's absolutely fine, but don't have anything inside which is going to all that. So, but anyway, that's a modular, conversation that we can have later. But yeah, in terms of the mesh itself, I just feel I might not be able to get something out of 8 hours here really, because I just feel if I'm going to just clean it up, the diffuse, it's just I'm not going to be using it in Sculpt. Or if I go to the other pipeline of Sculpt, it's not something, not you're not going to get something that is going to be useful and baked in into the game mesh that you have already. So I just thought, let me just record this whole thing, explaining these things so that it does make sense at some point. So that's why I just thought, I'll record it. So we'll probably chat about this later on phone. Yeah, have a nice one.